Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complaisance, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray, leering at you from the woodline. Visit the mothership at intothefrayradio.com. There you can find all the episodes, the blog posts, ITF gear, and sign up for the free guest newsletter. The weekly show is, of course, always free and available in all podcatchers, but if you'd like to support the show, and why wouldn't you, go to the website and click Become an Insider, which in turn gets you extra content each and every month. And by the way, if you would be so kind as to leave a rating and review in your listening platform of choice, Cosmic Karma shall be yours. Be part of the discussion by joining the interactive ITF Facebook group, follow on Twitter at ITF_radio and Instagram. If you have an experience that you'd like to share, email Shannon at intothefrayradio.com. Thanks so much for listening. Now, if you would be so kind, buckle up your safety belts. Put that tray table in the upright position. Liftoff is upon us.
We're good. I'm going to put you on speaker.
Okay. Is Jenny there too?
Shannon.
Hey, Jenny, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing excellent. And I want to say, right out of the gate, I have an apology for you guys because I don't even know what year this was, but it was the year that I went to the OBC. It was the first year after I went on Sasquatch Chronicles. So I was kind of overwhelmed with meeting everyone, and you guys were there, and I didn't come over and introduce myself, and I feel like a jerk. It was a dick move, and I want to say I'm sorry.
No apology necessary.
Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I feel like that was a huge missed opportunity on my part. So there, I feel better. I've always thought about that. I'm like, you didn't go introduce yourself to Jami and Jenny. That was really rude.
Well, to make you feel better, Bob was there, so everybody was like in awe of Bob.
That is so true. He is the most distinguished gentleman I've ever met, and he's such a character.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
He's so cute. Love him.
He is. He's a ladies' man. He knows how to sweet talk you, but it's not in any kind of a disrespectful way. He knows how to talk to everybody.
Yeah, he does. He's very sweet.
So, you guys are in Pennsylvania, right?
Well, we're from Pennsylvania, but we live on the Ohio border, so we're right in Ohio, but we're from Pennsylvania.
Okay, gotcha. So that is why your research group is called Pennsylvania and Ohio Bigfoot Field Evidence.
Yes.
Because you guys get to go to both places, which I miss a ton. You sent me that picture of you guys, like you're actually sitting outside, and you said you went for a hike before we hopped on our call today, and I'm going, oh man, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I had to ground myself because we're both kind of shy.
Oh, I don't think you guys surely aren't shy. Come on now.
A little bit.
No, in fact, Sean Forker knew that I was hopping on with you guys, and he was so excited about it.
Oh, yeah, Sean is awesome. I love him.
Now, did you guys go to Mothman?
No, we didn't go to We've never been to Mothman. I'm envious of people that go, but I've never gone.
You guys would love that one. Of course, it's up there with the OBC and everything, but all of the usual suspects are there and the people that we love, and it's just such a good time. It's so cool that a town like that embraces their local lore and their local monster.
Yeah, I always get like secondhand from Eric and Carrie for Giorgio about what happens and who they see, and it's always exciting.
Yeah, they always take the pug army out there with them, right?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so before I jump into the really juicy stuff and sightings and experiences, and why Bigfoot? Why did you guys get into this in the first place?
I'll kind of just jump into it kind of quick. My dad lived with us for a year. He had bone cancer, and he had passed away, and then it was maybe 4 months after he passed away, Jenny said, Jamie, you're not yourself. You need to get back to doing what you like to do. So we were always hiking. So it was the day that we had our experience, we went for a hike. And this what I'm going to tell you kind of borders on very bizarre. I mean, it's not your typical Bigfoot encounter, but it's bizarre. And I kind of break it into different categories. And my research goes in a different way, almost like laws of attraction, and I only learned that stuff later. But the day that we had our experience, I remember we had entered this turkey trail in Shenango in Pennsylvania, right on the Ohio border, and I said a prayer. I'm like, Dad, if you're here, give me a sign that you're here. And I believe that my dad will communicate with me. My mom passed away. I've had experiences. My whole life has been kind of woo in a way, which I hate that word, but it truly has been. So I forgot all about that prayer. And then we hiked this turkey trail, and we got to where there's a creek that feeds into this big lake. And our beagle started acting weird, and I picked her up because I thought she was stung or she had stepped on a thorn. And as soon as I picked her up, I'll let Jenny tell you what happened.
Well, yeah, Jamie picked her up because we didn't know what was going on with her because she's normally out front. She's a beagle, smell on the ground. She leads the way. And right after he picked her up, we heard this noise that was so intense and loud, you could actually feel it in your body. And Jamie and I just looked at each other like, what the, was that? We didn't know what it was.
So, Shannon, we were really just standing there, and I'm watching a puddle in front of us ripple from this noise. It was that loud. And it was this wailing, this long, drawn-out wailing. And we watched the trees in front of us, maybe 50 feet in front of us, shaking. And the whole time I'm holding my dog, and we're not really saying anything back and forth to each other. We're just eye contact. And at that point, I don't know how we did, but we just made this move to leave. And as we're leaving, you could hear this thing behind us. And at one point, it felt like it was on both sides of us. And we made it back to our vehicle, and we're in the vehicle. We still didn't say anything. We got home, and we started researching animal sounds because, we grew up, Jenny and I both grew up in the woods. We've never heard anything like that. So we went through everything, couldn't find anything. So we Googled Bigfoot vocalization. Just because. I was thinking what we heard was more prehistoric, kind of prehistoric primate something. So we Googled that, and this recording came up, and it's called the Ohio Howl. And as soon as we played that Ohio Howl, I was like, this is so strange because it was identical to what we heard, only louder.
Yeah, we looked at each other like, that's it.
So then I researched this Ohio Howl, and then I realized this is from Wellsville, Ohio, which is 40 miles from where we live now, where we had this experience. And, at that point, things got really strange for me because the days following that, I kept dissecting that day over and over in my mind, and I kept thinking, what, I heard my dad's voice in my head, Jamie, if you want to find the answer, you go back to the beginning. So in my mind, I was like, the trail was the beginning. So I'm driving to work, and I'm in my car, and I had this memory come to me that was super strange, and this is going to sound strange, but this is where my research takes a little bit of a turn. I remembered a memory with my dad before he died, and he asked me to take him outside because he wanted to look at the trees and he wanted to hear the birds. So I'm outside, and then he said, take me in. And my sister from Maryland gave me a stack of movies. So I gave my dad these movies, and I said, pick a movie. And I'm watching my dad watch this movie, which I'd never seen the movie. And it hit me on the way to work. The last memory with my dad was Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, yeah.
So literally, I started crying in the car, and I thought to myself, like, when you ask for something, the power of thought, the power of prayer, you do get a sign. So that day I wasn't looking for Bigfoot because that's not the furthest thing from my mind. I was looking for a sign. So I took that as sort of a sign, kind of weird. So then, I started researching, too, the power of your thought and the power of prayers. And so the weirdest thing happened. I started finding the laws of attraction, like this Abraham Hicks. I don't know if you know Abraham Hicks.
Yeah, the name sounds familiar.
Well, Abraham Hicks, and this is really going to sound strange too, but Abraham Hicks is this woman, Esther Hicks, who trans-channels a higher energy, and the name it gave her was Abraham.
Oh.
So this higher consciousness connects with her, and the weirdest thing is I started pulling up these things on YouTube about the power of thought, and the first first video I watched was this video about this guy his father had passed away, and he was in the cemetery, and this little dog comes up to him, and he reaches down to look at the dog, and the dog's name tag had his dad's name on it. And I'm like, I kept thinking, like, what are the chances of all of this?
Right.
It's all strange, like, we do live in a strange world, we live in a strange universe that we can't explain, and, the stuff that we find, we had an experience after this, too, where we took our friend, who's a fish and game and wildlife guy, to the same exact spot to show him where we had this encounter. This was maybe like a month later, or a few months later, I don't remember now, but we took him down, showed him, and on our way out, we heard what sounded like a man talking. Then we heard a whistle, and we heard like a dog bark. And Jenny put the dogs on the leash because she wasn't sure what was going to come out. Like, I'm thinking a dog's going to come out. But the guy that was with us, we watched something stand straight up and go straight away from us. So, now Jenny and I kind of research on a micro level the whole entire Shenango. And it's kind of our mission. Like, if you're going to find Bigfoot or you're going to find answers, you're going to find them where you had your experience.
So you guys think that it was mimicking all of those things?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I don't know.
So when you say you saw it stand up, I mean, you got a pretty good look at this thing, or?
It was from behind. So what I saw was like a head, shoulders, and back. So it wasn't like a facial thing. Like, I wouldn't have like Sibylla Irwin ask me to,
right,
describe it to a point of like a Dave Groves type image.
Yeah. I mean, how big was it? Did you go over where it stood up and so you could gauge how tall it was?
We did. What we did is, and I don't know why, but I didn't really have fear because I think at that point, part of me was like, I need answers, from the first experience. And then the second experience, I need answers. So we went directly down into where it was, and you could see where something had bedded down, and it was a ravine, so it's not really an easy area that you can go down into easily because it's very thick and thorny, and you're from Ohio, so like how thick the forests are.
Yeah.
The West, big trees and big forests, but Pennsylvania and Ohio, there's large ground cover.
Yeah, and that stuff is thorny, too. I remember that a lot about the Salt Fork area, especially. It's not easy to get through there unless you've actually you've done the bushwhacking, you've cut a trail through there.
Yeah, we know that. I have a lot of snags and a lot of pants.
Yes, and if you wear shorts, just forget it. You're not going off-road at all.
Oh, no, that's why I don't wear shorts when I go.
Yeah, you guys are well-seasoned by now. But yeah, that ground cover there is brutal.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
So, Oh my gosh, I miss it so much. And of course, the only reprieve that I have is when I get to retell some of the odd experiences I've had in the woods. They've happened out there, so I get to retell a lot of that and live vicariously through all you guys that still go out. And I'm hoping that I get a chance to go out to Washington State here pretty soon for that Devil's Creek area. But, to go to stuff like OBC and Mothman and to be within driving distance when I was in Ohio, I really miss that because I don't have that option anymore. I'm so far now.
And you probably miss trees. I would miss trees.
Oh, I miss them so much. But the desert has its own beauty and its own creepy factor. The fact that it's open, you would think would be better, but actually, if you go out in the desert at night, it's pretty damn creepy. But yeah, I miss the woods. I do. I don't miss seeing all the dead deer and everything on the side of the road all the time. But that's the only thing I really don't miss. I never did get used to that. I always want to pull over and just. Or the worst is actually when you would see a live deer on the side of the freeway because you knew what was going to happen to it. So, Jamie, let's go back to that first incident with you. Because I find it so interesting that, like you said, you asked for that. Like, you were looking for something. You're like, Dad, give me a sign. And then that happened. Now, I know that you had the memory of watching Harry and the Hendersons. Fantastic movie, by the way. Were you guys into Bigfoot before that? Were you into reading about it, or did you know much about it?
No, before the first encounter, we didn't know anything about Bigfoot. We didn't have Bigfoot on our mind at all.
I would always, Bigfoot is something out west. It's not something on the East Coast in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I believed in Bigfoot, but I would say I wouldn't believe it's here. But, after this experience, we got connected with other people, which, the OBC was a good place for us to go because that even felt like the laws of attraction because we're meeting more people. And then we hooked up with other people. And my goal was to interview people at the Shenango that had experiences. And we've done that. We've met a lot of people around the Shenango Reservoir that have had experiences. And, there's something, too, called the Shenango Dogboy, Shenango Dogman that people have experienced. I've had 3 cases with that. The most recent one is part of Brian Seach and Terry Seach. They have the Center for Unexplained Events.
Yes.
And they asked me to interview the person, which I really didn't want to go a whole lot into it, but because they're still looking into it. But I think maybe, I don't know that I would even believe in Dogman because that would be like a crossbreed of a human and a dog.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a universe that I don't understand. And, I'm not going to be a person that says I don't believe in something just because I don't understand it.
No, and that's what I appreciate about you guys. And I try to be the same way. I mean, how can I talk about my shadow people experience, but yet I don't believe what this guy says over here, or I scoff at it? That just seems, that's big glass house to me, so I understand where you guys are coming from, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're not scientists, so, when you say the word research, I'm not truly out there researching. I would say that I'm a seeker and I'm an observer. So I'm observing my surroundings, and I'm getting in touch with all of my senses. And I think my senses are heightened when I'm in the woods, and I try to be responsible with how I look at everything.
Now, the Shenango area, does that cross Ohio and Pennsylvania, or is that all in Ohio?
It does go into Ohio. So there's a railroad bridge that crosses into Ohio, and part of it's in Ohio and part of it's in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And then there's another called Pymatuning, which, all of this is Native American ground, which to me, I love because I love to research the history of it. And, I found out that there was the Native Americans, the Lenni Lenape, believed in something called Masingwa, which is their version of Bigfoot.
Mm. And what do they think this creature is, or is it more of a being?
Basically, it's a being. It's protector of the forest. I think most of the Native American tribes would describe it that way, like guardian of the forest.
Yeah, when you start talking about Native American legends and what goes on the land there's a lot of interesting stories that aren't just relegated to Bigfoot.
Oh, absolutely.
No, okay, let's jump back again to the Shenango area, because you were talking about all these different reports that you're getting just from that reservoir. So would you guys mind sharing some of those encounter stories that you've gotten from there?
Yeah. We were talking to this one man who was describing his experience that he had when the reservoir was first built, which was in 1960. And they used eminent domain, and they gave people a certain amount of time to evacuate their houses or they were going to be flooded. And this was shortly after the reservoir had been flooded and his house was still there. He was describing that as a little boy he was on his bicycle and he watched like this hairy ape type thing in the woods looking at him. And Jenny and I were standing there listening to his story, and he's describing the entrance to the trail that we entered.
Oh.
He lived in a house right next to this turkey trail where we had our experience.
Oh my gosh. And you didn't realize that until he was speaking?
Well, Jenny, you can answer.
Yeah, we had no idea that's what he was going to say. No,
wow. I mean, you guys must have been like, I'm sorry, did you just describe the same place that we had our first experience?
Right, yeah.
Wow, it's pretty cool.
That is incredible.
Another cool experience was we interviewed a son of a witness that Robert W. Morgan had interviewed. It was like one of W. Morgan's first people that he interviewed in this area because he's originally from like Pennsylvania, Ohio area. And we're now friends with the son of this witness who is, had passed away. But they were in the area called Hell's Kitchen. It's in Pennsylvania near Jackson Center, Pennsylvania. It's western Pennsylvania. But they were hunting, and they had killed a deer, and they said that they were dressing the deer right there, and they watched this thing watching them from the woods, and then it went into the woods. So they followed the path of where this thing went, and then they were looking down, and there's an area that's like it's a dump site for roadkill, which I know how you feel about roadkill. But they said saw this thing in this pit, like a roadkill site.
Oh, wow. Well, buffet for him, right?
Yeah.
Hell's Kitchen. Yeah, it's always like something with the word devil or hell or something deep and dark and just brings up those kind of thoughts, right? What about when you guys go out? I know you go out all the time because I follow you guys on Instagram and you're just constantly in the woods and I love it. What kind of signs are you guys looking for? And are there certain things that other people put a stamp on that's Bigfoot that you're not that excited about?
I'm not excited about when I see circles, and I know what pareidolia is.
Uh-huh.
I'm not excited about that, but, the things that intrigue me, and some of the people in the Bigfoot world that people reject, I don't always reject. Like the Mike Patterson in Ontario, I really enjoy his work. I believe that it's out there, and I believe that some people might question it, but I was in the Allegheny National Forest with some BFRO people and some people that you probably met at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, and they were researching on a physical level, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to pull my recorder out, and I use a Panasonic DR60.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably aware, you know what they are, right?
Yeah. But in case the listeners don't, you can kind of explain that.
So basically, it's a recorder that people have used in ghost hunting, but it picks up sounds that are lower than 20 Hz, which I guess would be considered like electronically recorded voice phenomenon. So I decided that I was just going to, the night in the Alleghenies we were hearing stuff in the woods behind our camp. So I pulled out this recorder, and I thought to myself, I'm going to research on sort of a spiritual level, because I don't know, I think outside the box, and that's just who I am. So I pulled out the recorder and I said, can you tell me the name of this forest? and I'm looking at complete pitch black in front of me, but I'm still hearing something. And on the recorder, it said Allegheny. So it answered me intelligently. And I'm not making claims that Bigfoot knows English. I'm not making claims that it is Bigfoot. But I am making claims that this recording came across in English, and it answered me intelligently.
Of course, that being the kind of land that we were mentioning, it might just be another phenomena happening at the same time, because as you said, you guys are hearing noises, so obviously the BFRO people are going, okay, well, the big ape is back in the woods. I mean, just to simplify things, right? The big ape is over there making noise, but you're kind of going, well, let me see what else is going on here. And it actually, you caught an EVP saying Allegheny.
It said Allegheny clearly.
Wow.
And then I'm truly, I'm going to say this, but I really truly do think outside of everything, because, we don't know answers, and I want to find answers, and I'm a seeker. But then one of the other answers is, I said, can you do a wood knock? And on the recording it said wood knock. Like, it said it like it was a question, like, what is a wood knock?
Wow. Jenny, were you there for this excursion?
No, on this one I wasn't, so I missed out on this one.
I bet he came home going, listen to this.
I know, and when I heard it, I was like, wow, that is really something.
I mean, what are the chances that it's audio pareidolia and you get Allegheny and woodknock after, it's direct answers to questions? Like you said, the second time it sounded maybe like it was kind of confused, possibly, but it still said it. So I don't know what to take of that. That's very interesting.
Well, you watch the ghost hunting shows and ghost hunters in general, and you watch how they do it, but the best way to ask a question is to already know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew the answer was going to be Allegheny, but I didn't know that I was going to get a response. I
mean, do you go to sleep that night after that, or do you not really get that phased with any experiences like that?
I didn't get, I don't get too excited because not really. I think humans scare me more than anything. So that didn't scare me, and I didn't want to make a big deal of it because there were little kids there.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good answer. I've said that a lot. Human beings can definitely, I would say 90% of the time, are the scariest thing in the woods. So, yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Good answer on that one. All right, so what about signs that you guys do get excited about?
Oh, signs like we are finding a lot of X's when we go out. We're finding a lot of like the teepee structures when we go out. We've found several of those.
We've actually cast prints, which I'm kind of excited about, but I don't think I'm the best casting type person, but we found prints that are exciting.
And do you guys, I mean, I'm not trying to pinpoint your exact location, nor do I want to give that out, but are you guys to the point where you don't even have to really drive that far to go to these places, I guess?
No, we don't have to drive far, no.
That's great.
No. And honestly, there's different sides of this lake. There's the west side and there's the east side. And I would say equally, both the west side and the east side have the same kind of structures. We're watching 7 different teepee-type structures. And what's kind of cool is I've met these people in Ontario, Canada. Like, there's a lady named Leanne Carnegie who has her own, page. But I'm watching structures that she's posting from Ontario that are almost identical to what we're finding here. And I guess logic would say put a camera up and see what's happening, but I haven't had a whole lot of luck with trail cams. The one time I used a trail cam, I had these weird, anomalous photos. There were 3 in a series of glowing light. That was super strange, and it almost looked like an eyeball, like something had come up to it really, really close.
Mm-hmm. You know what? That's so odd because I saw a trail cam photo from Devil's Creek, and it was kind of the same thing and it wasn't anything glowing, but it was almost like something got super close to the camera, and then it registered and took the photo. But I don't think that you guys are alone with the whole trail cam thing, because I don't know why I can't say those two words tonight. Sorry. With the trail cams, because it just seems like the second you put them up, you're guaranteed that for the most part, the activity's going to stop, because I really do feel like these guys can sense it somehow, and they go elsewhere, or they just avoid them.
I agree. I feel like they are aware of technology. I think that they're actually, and I'm going to just say this, and I'm not a scientist, but I feel like they're tightly connected to our own consciousness. I feel like our consciousness can connect with them in a laws of attraction type way. Like a hunter that's going out to look for like the big buck, and they really truly believe they're going to get that big buck, and they do. And I would love to have been able to speak to Roger Patterson, but I love the Patty image, and I love the Patty video, and I love that Bob Gimlin shared his story, but I think Roger Patterson may have been a person that was completely 100% onto the laws of attraction, and he truly was looking for that. And it's always like, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And can I just say that I can hear, I think it's like frogs and crickets in the background, maybe, unless I'm mistaken. But I hope that when I do noise removal that it doesn't take that out, because I love the ambiance going on right now that you guys are giving me. They're sitting outside for everybody listening. They're sitting outside right now, which is so awesome. Out in the dark, because I know it's dark there right now. You guys are 3 hours ahead of me, so. Oh, so do you guys think that the Sasquatch in your area are there all year round, or are they migrating to other places?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it does seem like we kind of notice more things in the spring and fall, doesn't it?
It's more spring and fall. Yeah, the summer, and it could be just too that in the summer here, it's hard to find prints because the ground. In the spring and fall, you have the soft soil, so we're finding more tracks. But the shelters themselves are all year long. I found them in the winter. We found a shelter that was like almost 50 feet high.
Wow. What did that look like? What was that set up like?
It was set up like there was one main branch that went straight up, and then there were these other branches that came around it, and they were... And like Jenny can tell you, the very first shelter that we ever found, she found it, and she can describe it to you, but it was definitely... I would have walked past it thinking some hunter made it, but then I realized in Pennsylvania it's illegal to use trees and stuff as a blind. But I'll let Jenny can describe to you what the first shelter she found was like, and actually I looked at it and said, man, that's really good, Jenny.
Yeah, it was just actually in between, or like these two pine trees, or connected to it, two pine trees, and we were looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, this is really interesting, because look at how it's put together, and it was very organic how the branches were, but there was actually, like the grapevines. It's almost like the grapevines were twisted and not tied. They weren't tied, but they were twisted in a way around branches, which I thought was pretty interesting. Not how we would tie something, because they weren't tied. But it was just very interesting.
To me, it was almost like a nest-like structure, like a primate would make. And it's something that we keep going back to. So I go back to this location, and I keep observing it. And, like over the years, it's slowly deteriorating.
Yeah.
But I found another one that it's truly like a nest-like structure, like they're finding out at the Olympic Project, which I would love to see more photos of that. But, I know that's their thing. And
right. Yeah, I think that, that sounded like an incredible shelter that you found. And like you said, it wasn't like it was tied, but they wrapped it around and it still worked, like as something functional for them, right?
It had like branches on the ground where something would be, not be on the ground.
Yeah, it had like a base, and then it had like a...
There was a weird thing, and I'm going to mention this because maybe other researchers or people that observe things will connect with it, but it was tied in such a way that it wasn't like any kind of knots or anything that I've seen before, but it seemed fused, like there was a fusing to it.
Mm.
And I don't understand that. But here's another thing that I'll add that I don't hear other researchers say a whole lot about. But when we go to these areas, we're there often. So if something's watching us, it knows we're there. But when we go back, a lot of times we're finding branches just stabbed into the ground around where we are watching these things.
So besides that first incident with the classic Ohio howl wailing sound, have you guys ever felt intimidated or felt a little nervous or scared to where you're like, I think we need to leave the woods now?
No, I've never gotten that. And I can walk in the woods in pitch black without a flashlight, and I feel comfortable. I'm not intimidated by very much.
And I know that you guys are so close that maybe there's really no need to do this. I don't blame you. But do you guys actually go spend the night out in the woods ever?
We have gone out at night. I mean, we don't
like to sleep in the woods like just Jenny and I sleep there. We have not done that. We camp in the Alleghenies with other people, but
yeah, just to go do research, we've gone at night.
Yeah, I mean, we've stayed till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Yeah, well,
I'm
that's...
not sure I would...
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, because I'm like, well, you guys are so close that you could just stay up all night and then still go home and sleep in your beds, right? So... Yeah, right. Why sleep on the ground if you don't have to? Okay, so moving away from Bigfoot, and you guys do not have to talk about this recent sighting at all if you don't want to. Of course, it was the one that I brought up that your friend mentioned to me that you guys had just gotten. But the subject of Dogman, and I think it's a subject that a lot of us have trouble with, and we've kind of accepted Bigfoot into the fold, and now we've got this. Usually, it's a super pissed off, doesn't care if people see it kind of a creature that just sounds so out of the box. And we like to think of ourselves as out of the box people, but this is like way out of the box. So, yeah, I mean, Dogman. What do you guys think about Dogman?
I don't know. That Dogman creeps me out personally.
Mm-hmm.
Jay's not a fan of werewolf type things. I'm not really good at it.
No, it's a good answer, and that should be the answer that everybody has, because if someone's like, oh yeah, I'd love to high five a Dogman, even if he's really ticked off and looks like he wants to eat me. I'm like kind of going, no, it should be on everyone's no list. They just seem always angry, and they're not shy. Like Bigfoot seems to me like he's always kind of creeping and he's peeking and he doesn't want you to see him. But so many of these the Dogman tales are like, they're just in your face. And if you see him, well, guess you need a diaper because he's not going to move.
Right. I will talk about one of the Dogman things that I did with Brian Seach and his Q group. We interviewed this woman who is a nurse, which when we interviewed her, I would say she's completely 100% believable, and she's a nurse, so she knows anatomy really well. But she was going to work at 5 o'clock in the morning with her boyfriend, and they came across this open field that enters into woods, and this thing was standing on the road that she said looked like a werewolf, and it put its hand up to cover its eyes. And she said as they got closer to it, she just kept screaming, just go, go, go. Oh. And the thing reached out for her door handle. And then when they got past it, they stopped their truck and they looked in the rearview mirror, and it had taken 2 leaps into this wooded area.
Oh. It reached for the door handle on the car.
Yeah, on her truck, yes. And she was in the side, so...
Oh, mm-hmm. See, that's what I mean. They just don't care. They don't care. And he's like, I feel like trying to rip your door off, so I'm going to give that a shot. It's so different from the Sasquatch reports.
It does seem different, and people ask me, they say, do you think it could be like a misidentification of a human, or do you think it could be a version of Bigfoot? And I would just say, I don't know. Like a werewolf to me is frightening.
Yeah.
Bigfoot can be frightening, I guess.
So what is this? You mentioned earlier. I'm sorry, Jenny. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I don't see, like, Bigfoot or Sasquatch is frightening. But, yeah, the Dogman, yeah.
Right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I totally agree. Like, Dogman is... The people that I've spoken to and the encounters I've heard on other shows, it's just on my no list. I mean, I know that I'm always whining about I want to see something and experience something. I just feel like if you have an experience with the Dogman, there's a really good chance it's going to ruin you for ever wanting to go in the woods again. There's a pretty good chance of that.
It kind of did that for this nurse. She said that she was afraid to come out of her house for days.
Well, and she saw this thing, obviously, near a road, or at least a service road or something. She was in her truck, right? So, I mean, that's another thing. Dogman also seems to come in closer to urban areas.
I would agree, but you know what? I would agree that Bigfoot comes in close to populated areas, too. And people would be frightened of the stuff that I find and where I find it. Like, there's a beach where I find a lot of things. There's a woods that overlooks this beach, and I found things, like, I found tracks. And I think to myself, like, people would probably be freaked out if they knew why I was in the woods.
Right. No, that's cool, though. So you go down to a beach, and you see tracks. Now, have you guys ever found, like stacks of any shells or rocks or anything like that you think a Sasquatch might have done?
Well, yes. I mean, we found clamshells we found a handprint, which I believe is a handprint that I cast. And, I showed it at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference to Cliff, and Cliff had a comment about it. And, like, he's right. It did look like sliding, but after I left him, I'm thinking, why wouldn't somebody's hands slide in the mud if they're collecting clamshells?
Right.
I mean, he's an authority on it, but even afterwards, I'm like, well, he could be wrong too,
Absolutely. No, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the rocks, we have seen rocks that were stacked before. But you never know if somebody did that or...
Right.
We have found that, yes.
And we're pretty quiet about, like, what we do and where we go. The game commissioner here knows what we do. And sometimes they'll see us in the woods, and they're like, this is kind of a funny story, but I was in the woods at night, and I was doing, like, the classic Bigfoot call to see if I'd get anything back, and knocks and stuff. And I hear something coming through the woods, like it's this long path that goes back. And then all of a sudden I see a flashlight, and I hear a voice that says, Jamie?
You're like, yes?
That was jokes. We're like, somebody's coming.
Oh, man. It's so awesome when the game commissioner just knows you by first name, right? You're like, yep, it's us. Here we are.
But what's cool is they like us, and they appreciate that we're there. And, they told us before, they've seen things that they cannot explain.
Oh, goodness. That was going to be my next question. Have they ever confided in you guys? That is awesome. So just that right there, for them to say, well, yes, but we can't say anything. I mean, that's a huge high five, right? I mean, that's a huge score to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they did warn us that, the number one thing we should be scared of is people in the woods with warrants for their arrest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, people are 100% the freakiest thing in the woods. Did you guys ever hear, I've mentioned it on my show, but Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report was out in the woods with a friend or a girlfriend at the time, or whoever it was. And they're out, way out, and they're hiking, they're on a trail, whatever. And I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Anyway, she goes off trail for a minute. Maybe it was to go to the restroom. I don't want to assume things if not the story, and now I sound like a jerk. But she went off trail for a minute, and he goes down, and he's like kind of looking around, and he sees a guy crouched down behind a bush, and all the guy has on is blue overalls. But he sees him. Doesn't say a word. just continues to squat and stare. And he's watching his, Micah's friend or girlfriend. Mike is like, okay, let's wrap this up. Let's go. I mean, what in the world? Why? What are these people doing? That would just freak me out. I'd be done with the woods for a few weeks after that.
I mean, we've had weird human experiences in the woods. Like, there was one time we were hiking, and some guy came completely out of nowhere, and he had, like, military-type boots on, a crew cut, and to me he looked like he was fresh out of the military, and he was carrying a table leg, and he had a gun, and he, like, shoulder-checked Jenny, and I said, hey.
Oh.
And then he went down this ravine and then started shooting a gun, and we're like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, we got to go.
He shoulder-checked you.
Well, it wasn't like, he just like, really, it was more like just a brush. He brushed.
It was a shoulder check.
Jamie's like, no, it was bad. It was a check.
But, I mean, I think it might sound weird, but the chair leg, I think, freaked me out more than the gun. I was like, why does he have a chair leg?
Right. So random. I know. Now looking back, you're like, was that some kind of a murder weapon he was taking to bury somewhere? What was he doing with that? I mean, he had the gun, obviously, but I mean, maybe he bludgeoned someone. Maybe there was blood on there that we missed. I mean, there's all these questions because there's so many random things that go on in the woods. And not to mention, dark rituals, and God forbid you come across one of those. I mean, I don't know if you're going to make it out of that. They might be like, hey, there's an extra sacrifice for the night. Awesome.
I don't want anything to do with it.
No. There's some really creepy stuff out there. And you know what I've always said? That it would really freak me out to see a Bigfoot that you hear the reports of the more, the human type faces. You know what? I think I'd rather have one of those give me like the deepest, darkest growl and like grin at me with like dirty teeth. I would rather have that than come across some dark satanic cult ritual in the woods, chanting and humming and robes and weird stuff. Nope, thanks. No, I'll take the human-looking Sasquatch, because I know that would kind of mess with my mind a little bit, the human-looking Sasquatch, but cult stuff, I'm out. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
True.
All right, so let's end on a note that this is something that you kind of glanced over real quick, and I don't know if it's something that you guys can even talk about, but I've never heard this term before, so I'm kind of excited about it. You mentioned Dogboy. I've never heard of this.
Well, I'm going by Brian Seach and Terry Seach. They're with the group, the Center Unexplained Events, and they were one of the paranormal shows. I don't know what it was, and they had a woman from the 1950s that had an encounter here at Shenango with this thing that came out and grabbed her sister's arm and started pulling her into the woods. And I think she's the one that called it Dogboy.
Okay.
Shenango Dogboy.
Ah.
So that may be like legend here, but, like it's taken on sort of a life where people are claiming to see this thing. I've been involved in 3 different cases of the Dogboy, but, I listen and I pay attention to what people say, and I take the notes and I think about it, but I would hate to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So can you at least tell me that all the reports that you've taken, or the few that you've taken, they are all very similar, if not spot on?
They're similar in like what you said. They're closer to human population. They seem less afraid. They're less elusive, maybe, or they're more daring. I don't know.
So can you just kind of go down the basic list of qualities, the physical qualities of the Dogboy?
One of the qualities is the pointy ears, and the spine is a little different than how people would describe Bigfoot. The face, the snout. I mean, the nurse that described it, and I mean, I believe that they were recording her. I was taking notes, and somebody else was taking photos at the time, and she was literally describing what sounded like a werewolf.
Yeah, because it was tall. She said it was very tall, and I know some
and
people...
it was skinnier and more muscular than, like, Bigfoot's described.
But some people see what's smaller and shorter.
I keep getting the image of the son from the Munster family. He kind of looked like a little wolf, right? Except you guys are saying that some people are saying it's taller and just thinner than maybe a quote-unquote dogman or werewolf would be, huh?
You know, they're also saying the bent legs, like the bent.
Oh. Well.
Yeah, more like the legs are maybe kind of more like a dog's.
And again, it's only like, I've only been involved in 3 interviews, so I don't know if there's people out there with more. Like Brian Seach definitely has one of the largest libraries that I've ever seen, and I could spend days in there looking at his reports and stuff.
Those are
Sean Forker.
Yeah, those are 2 good people, Brian and Terry Seach. I got to meet them at the Baroque conference years back. Oh, talking about all the conferences and seeing everybody makes me miss it all that much more. Yeah, the Dogboy. I mean, that's interesting though, because maybe it's just baby Dogman. I don't know, or maybe it is something different. There's just so many interesting things going on in the woods, and I know that you guys feel the same. I just wish that anybody and everybody that saw anything weird would, come forward and have the guts to talk about it. And can you imagine the amount of reports we have then?
I think the world's changing. I think people are more open, and even when I first came forward with this story, I remember I drove to DuBois, Pennsylvania to try to talk to somebody that was in the Bigfoot field. And we got out there, and that's when we first met Sean Forker. And Jenny was in a dress, and they're like, "Do you want to come in the woods with us?" And, it didn't work out. But
yeah,
even then I was nervous about telling what had happened.
Well, you get more comfortable.
What's that, Jenny?
I said you get more comfortable after a while.
Yeah, you do. You do. I've definitely had that same experience, just telling mine, and there is a cathartic aspect. Like once it finally comes out, it gets a little easier to tell each time you tell it. And I mean, with what you guys do, and I know that you go out every single day and you're just so ingrained in this and you're very dedicated. Do you guys have a Facebook page, or is there something that we can plug if people, especially in that area, want to get in touch with you guys so that you can check something out or take down a report? Because for everybody listening, it is so important that even if you think it's not it was just a fleeting glance and there was this weird noise and that was it, it's a big deal. Every little tidbit that any of us can collect, it's a huge deal. So is there anything that you guys want to give out as far as any, and don't feel pressured, but any contact information or a Facebook page or anything?
I mean, Shannon, I use my Instagram, and I use it more as a place to archive my photos and my stuff that I find. Because where do you store your photos? Like, what if your computer crashes and all this? But I use Instagram, and it's like Jami, J-A-M-I / Jenny, it's not really, it's just a place where I use. And, I welcome people to look at my stuff.
And on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, Facebook, we have the Penn, Ohio Bigfoot Field Research Organization. I use it mostly for local people, like the people that are on there, and I ask questions like, does anyone know about this area?
Right.
Why it's like this. But I agree, my wish is that people just come forward to podcasts like you, and talk more about it.
Yeah. I agree with you, though. You did say earlier, I think it's getting more accepted. People are being more open to it. I totally agree. I do think, though, especially depending on what kind of job position or career people have, I really think that that's what's holding them back. But people need to realize that you can stay anonymous. You don't even have to go on a podcast, but just get a hold of people like Jami and Jenny or somebody in your area. And every little tiny piece of information really helps us. And because we're all pretty obsessed with this stuff. So I think that any bit of information is very, very helpful.
Yeah, and the most responsible approach to anything is, just be open. Don't say that you don't understand something just because you don't understand it. Because,
Right.
I've seen people tell me things with such a passion that I'm like, this person has to be telling the truth.
Well, yeah, and you know what, that leads to another point, and good segue there, Jamie, is even if your site has an odd, or what maybe you consider to be a very odd element, or you're worried other people would consider it to be an odd element. Maybe you saw a light in the woods. Heck, I saw a light in the woods when I was out for Bigfoot. I didn't really want that to happen, but it did, and I'm okay to talk about it. If there is an odd element and it's holding you back, again, it's just really important to get these stories out there, and don't be afraid to do so, because I think if any of us have been in this long enough, you're going to start taking every kind of report that you can, whether you think it's kind of a little bit outside the box or not. I think it's really important.
That's what I love about you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm just glad that I got to talk to guys. I get to text Sean after this and go, I talked to them and they're awesome. So, well, I will make sure to link your Instagram and your Facebook group, because I really hope that people in the area might be like, you know what, it's time to tell my story, and I want to tell it to Jami and Jenny. So that's my hope.
They can put Jami King or Jenny King and find us too.
Yes, on Facebook, right? Yeah, you guys have your own pages on Facebook, and then the group page and the Instagram. That was Jami_Jenny, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you guys so
Well,
much.
thank you.
Yeah, thank
I will let you
Crickets.
get back to your evening. Yes, you guys with the crickets. I love it. I don't even know if I'll do any noise removal because the ambiance is just so good. I'm worried that it would pull the crickets away, and I don't want them to go away. All right, you guys.
Sean,
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I will. I'll tell Sean hi for you guys, and this will go up Thursday. All
have
right,
a good night.
you guys too. Thank you so much. If you need anything, just let me know.
All right, yeah. Bye.
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 Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little fire. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the cohorts to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. else. They will say, no, we don't believe literally in reincarnation. That after your funeral, you will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in at the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogman put it in this way. He said, spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.